GS3 can be divided into broad topics such as economy, security, disaster management, environment, and science and technology. Now let's deal with answer writing in economy. Just as we open GS2 answers in polity with constitutional provisions, in GS3 economy, try to start your answers with a statistic or relevant data pertaining to the question. For collecting such data, economic survey, budget, newspapers, and reports are your best sources. For example, if a question asks, do you agree with the view that steady GDP growth and low inflation have left Indian economy in good shape? Your introduction to your answer should begin with data pertaining to GDP growth in recent years. Similarly, a question on MSME would require you to mention basic data such as their share in employment, GDP or exports, etc. Apart from data, also do prepare certain important graphs and charts and mention them in your answers wherever relevant. For example, a question on NPA, rising NPA problem. You can depict the trend of increasing NPAs over the recent years in a chart to add valuable information in your introduction. Next, just as in other subjects as we have discussed, extensively use subheadings to structure and frame your answers properly. Divide your question into parts and answer each subpart under a separate subheading. Thirdly, answer broadly. What do we mean by this? If a question comes on broad topics such as inclusive growth, instead of writing a long paragraph on one or two segments such as health or education, try to incorporate diverse categories such as health, education, skill development, agriculture, women, tribals, financial inclusion, etc., mentioning the relevant government schemes in these areas such as PMAY or e.g. NREGA and PDS, etc. Lastly, for answering every topic on the economy, prepare a topical summary beforehand on the lines of definition of that particular concept, latest data pertaining to that concept, government policies in that sector, current status and the problems ailing that sector, along with expert recommendations and solutions. Every year you see questions and themes repeated especially in GS3 economy section. Once you prepare such a basic snapshot framework for all the topics, as and when you find those topics, it will become much easier to handle them in the exam hall. Next, we move on to topics such as security, disaster management, and environment. There isn't much specific about answer writing under these segments, as questions are generally predictable as they tend to focus on current affairs. So if your knowledge of current affairs is good, you will sail through this section pretty easily. For example, if a question comes on energy scenario, you should mention recent data pertaining to India's INDCs under Paris Agreement. Just be thorough with current affairs. You will definitely answer these segments well. So keep track of summits and agreements that India is signing to ensure that you don't miss out any topics under these sections. In border management specifically, maps can be very handy to illustrate particular concepts. For example, there are specific concepts such as red corridor or golden triangle, golden crescent, etc., that you come across under security topic, which can be definitely illustrated through a map of India. Secondly, in security section, one can also refer to international best practices in security and disaster management and quote them in your answers, especially towards conclusion, and say how India can emulate them. They add nice flavor to your answer and ensure that you gain 1 or 2 extra marks compared to the average answer. Next, we move on to science and technology. To answer science and technology questions well, first you must have fundamental understanding of basic static knowledge on core areas that are generally asked in UPSC. These include space topics and concepts such as GSLV, PSLV, cryo engine, etc. Nuclear related concepts such as nuclear fission, fusion, fast breeder reactor, etc. Similarly, under biotech, you have certain concepts such as gene editing, stem cells, GM crops, etc. So try and prepare and understand these basic concepts well before you attempt current affairs in science and technology. You can use any coaching material to develop a basic understanding. Also use internet extensively to clarify any of the doubts that you may have. Now once you have this basic knowledge, what you have to do is just try and find out any scientific issue that is recently recurring in news and develop a basic framework around that particular scientific issue. The framework goes along the lines of first the concept and a relevant schematic if possible. Why is that particular thing in news? The potential benefits of that scientific concept across multiple dimensions, the threats if any it poses, and finally solutions that we can make it to make it beneficial to everybody. Just analyze every scientific topic that is recently recurring in news under this segment. It becomes much easier to answer any question in science and technology. Now let us understand the principles discussed here through a sample answer. The question goes along the lines of justify the need for FDI for the development of Indian economy. Why is there a gap between MOEs signed and actual FDIs? Suggest remedial steps for increasing actual FDIs in India. Now, as we have discussed, it's always suggested to start your answer with an introduction. So here we introduce saying FDI refers to long-term investment by a company of one country in a firm located in another country. Simple and sweet. We also throw in a statistic, a chart that shows FDI inflow in the past 5-6 years into India. Next, we tackle the first part of the question, that is the justifying the need of FDI for development of the Indian economy. So you add various points under different dimensions. So you add why FDI is a specific stable long-term investment, there is technology transfer, human resource development, creation of jobs, tax revenues, etc. So this essentially answers the first part of the question. Next, under the separate second subheading, you discuss and define what an MOU means. Then you list out reasons why there is a gap between FDI and MOU. So here we discuss various reasons such as litigation, red tape, along with particular statistics and World Bank reports, land acquisition problem, uncertain tax policies. So please keep a note of how we mention a lot of examples and reports to make your answer practical and relevant. And then we move on to the remedial steps that we should take, where we write about IPR policies, land reforms, DTAs, ease of doing business, certainty in taxation, insolvency and bankruptcy code, etc., etc., to make it broad and at the same time specific to the question that is asked.